So our next step for this is really, we want to be able to say that it's completed. We also want to be able to edit it if you want to edit it, and we also want to be able to just simply delete it, right? So those are functionalities that are currently missing. So why don't we do that and add those functionalities? So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to extract this and create a component that will handle all of that. So I'm going to create a component called ToDo Item. All right, so let's go to ToDo Item.tsx. Okay, so we're going to go ToDo Item component. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and throw in some code here so that we can kind of speed it up. This ToDo item is going to grab the to-do. I'll just go ahead and copy all of this so we don't have to spend too much time. Let's explain them though. All right, so it's going to grab the to-do, right? It's going to expect a to-do object, and then let's put that in there. That's just TypeScript stuff, right? Okay, so we have that. That's awesome. And then what we're going to do is we want to render that to-do, right? So for now, let's use P, and let's render to-do.to-do, just to at least make sure that it's rendering. And then in our to-do list, we're going to import to-do item component, and we're going to use that over here. Let's get rid of that. Set this break. Again, we're going to feed it the key, so to-do.id, and then it expects the to-do object, right? So we're going to feed it the to-do object also. If we click save, as you can see, it's still rendering it, which is awesome. And if we add another one, it's still rendering it fine, which works perfectly fine. All right, no problem. All right, so the next thing we want is we want to add some functionality so that we can put a checkbox on there if it's already done, and we also want to be able to update it or delete it, right? So the first thing that we're going to do, I'm actually going to get rid of this. I'll put an input. In fact, I'm just going to copy this right now. I'm going to have a checkbox added on. We're going to have a method that will handle the checkbox. So handle checkbox. Okay, that will handle that. We'll take care of that in just a second. And then we're gonna use an input for the editable component here. Obviously, there's a lot of solutions to this. You can use a div and dangerously set in their HTML if you want to, so you can handle that. But this is a quicker, and I think it's an easier solution. So we're gonna do this instead. And then the default value is going to be to-do. Cool. We'll add some functionalities here in just a second. You know what we can add right now is we'll disable it if to-do is complete. So that's one thing we can do. And then let's put a button, an X, and then unclick handle delete, which will make a method for that. Okay, and then the next thing that we're going to do is we also let's do a handler on the input on blur. So that's when we'll do an update. Again, there's a lot of ways to solve this, but we'll just solve it this way. I mean, obviously there's one key up, one key down. You can do all those things where you can then use a debounce method to update the database. We're just going to do on blur so that we can stay practical with our solutions here. Handle blur. Awesome. Finally realizing I'm doing all this. So let's go ahead and save that, see what that looks like. Cool. So right now that's looking pretty decent. Let's grab some CSS here that I already created. Alright, there's that. And then I also want to add the CSS. And I'll explain the CSS to you in just a second. With this code, what we want is that if to-do is indeed complete, then what we want it to do is for it to put a line through it, right? So let's check it out and see what this looks like. Well, we won't see that yet because we haven't implemented the checkbox yet, right? So we can check it and nothing happens with any of these. Right now it's kind of, if I'm outside, it's kind of ugly, but that's why we're gonna leave it for practical purposes. At least we know which one is which. But let's do handling the checkbox. So if we do click the checkbox, we want it to update the database so that it changes whatever the current status of complete is. So complete could be false, turn it into true. Complete could be true, turn it into false, and so on. So let's add that code next. All right, so to set up our handle checkbox, what we need is we're actually going to need our auth information, our user information, right? So we're gonna go const auth equals use auth. Oops. Okay, so we're gonna need that, import use auth, because we're gonna need, if you remember, the reference for our document collection in Firestore requires the UID of the user. So we definitely need to use auth. All right, so next thing is when we handle the checkbox, we actually need, it's actually an event handler, so, and we want this to be async because we are gonna use await once we leverage the Firebase method, okay? So let checked equals e to target that check. So this is gonna grab the current value if it's checked or not. Whatever that is, we're gonna use that to update the database. Let's create a reference. I won't type that because we've done it several times already. So but let me explain, right? So we're our doc reference. Now we're gonna try and tackle our specific document in the collection. We're gonna use our DB, which we haven't imported yet. In our users collection in our database, use our UID to find our user, go into that user's to-dos collection, and then find the ID of that to-do. All right, so that's gonna be the reference to find that actual to-do, and that's what we're gonna update. Okay, so let's go ahead and find our import for our methods for Firebase. I'll just import all of them for now. And the rest is actually really, really easy. So there it is. That is all that we are actually required to do, but we do need our DB. So this is gonna be a lib, Firebase and client. Okay, just to make sure. Probably should do a check. If there's no auth, we should just not do anything, right? So return. So that should do the trick. And that's a very simple method. So what we're doing is we're feeding the update doc method by Firebase the document reference for the actual document itself using the ID and the reference to the user and to-dos collection. And then we're really only updating whether it's complete or not and whatever the value of checked is. So that's how easy it is to update the database. So let's go ahead and click on hello world. As you can see, it updates all of our data. Okay, and then if I was going to uncheck that, it will also update the database, as you can see here. Right, it updated it. If I do it again, it updates it. As you can see, hello world right over here is now true. Everything else is false. Same thing would go to the gym and so on. So that's awesome. It's actually working in our database. It's updating all of the items. We could even check the database. So let's go ahead and find that in the database. To-dos, toRL, which is the hello world. If I go there, as you can see, all right, what if we change it again? Let's go uncheck it. If we go back, look, it's false now. If we check it again, as you can see, it changes in real time. So that's pretty awesome. That's working. So now the only thing we're really missing is to add handle delete and handle blur. So let's add that on next. All right, so handle delete is actually very easy. We're gonna just copy and paste our code here because it's pretty repetitive as far as updating is concerned. I'm gonna do, that's handle blur, and I'm also gonna do the same thing for handle blur and then handle delete. So we're gonna need that, and that's also handle blur is an event, so we wanna make sure that we grab the event object. Perfect. Grab the new value. And then we have the doc reference, which is the same thing as this. We could actually set up this doc reference probably above here, somewhere up here, but that's okay. We can just leave that for now. And then of course, then what we'll do is update the new to-do value if we're gonna change it. And the same thing with, let's check that. If we are going to delete, we get the reference to the document, and then we're gonna delete that doc reference, right? So before we do that, I'd like to add a check if there's no auth, for the sake of consistency. All right, and so let's try it out. So if you remember, if it's checked, right, it disables the input, so we can't add any input. You can see there's a little bit of a gray color in there, so that's pretty cool. All right, let's just say I want to delete hello world. This is supposed to be on handle blur. This is supposed to be handle delete. Okay, so I made a mistake there. All right, let's try that one more time. If we are deleting, as you can see now, it is deleting all of our items, which is pretty cool. And then we can add some more items if we want to. Boom. And then if we would check it off, every item is working pretty good. And then if I want to update anything within it, I can say tomorrow. And if I go out of there, we can see that it's actually updating it. And if we add more, grocery again, here we go. As you can see, it has maintained the value of pickup kids tomorrow when I updated it. Okay, get rid. So all of the methods that we need to function is not working, which is pretty awesome. We have a pretty decent semi-fully functional application here. Well, I would say it's fully functional at this point. The next step that we're going to do is we're going to take this to the next level, where this is pretty much complete. The app is done. But with NextJS, there are some pretty cool functionalities that I really like, where you're hiding all of your methods and you're separating actions from the UI itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to move all of these methods into the server side. And so that's going to be our next step. So we know it's working, but now what we want to do is we just want all this code gone, not coming to the client side, and we're going to have it run on the server side, and that's going to be our next step.